Coming up, is Vice President Kamala Harris being set up to fail? Publicly, the White House is rallying behind Harris after reports of alleged friction in the West Wing. But do they really have her back? We'll discuss when we come back. What happens when the Fox News propaganda machine covers a black and Asian woman vice president? Sexism, with a heaping side order of birtherism and racism, of course.
But there's a lot we don't know about Kamala Harris. Most people probably don't know she really grew up in Canada. That's where she went to high school. She's not from this country in that sense. By the way, how did someone who clearly is not liked by the people around her and clearly isn't very good at her job get so high up? Well, we know her first meaningful job in politics was given to her by her boyfriend at the time.
She sounds a lot like Meghan Markle, to be honest with you. Both of these are very entitled people who claim constant victim class. And the fact is, normal people are fed up with this, seriously fed up with this.
Isn't Ted Cruz from Canada? Anyway, now that is clearly Fox News trying to Hillary Clinton their next target 4 years before their golden god possibly runs for autocrat. President. But this week, we also saw reports from multiple media outlets citing dysfunction and lack of focus inside the vice president's office and her staff. Heavy scrutiny of Harris because of her race and gender is constant. We've seen it since the former senator ran for president. But we also know the Harris portfolio includes a lot of tough, thorny issues, either blocked, pushed to the back burner, or impossible to resolve. And that says a lot more about the people around her than about Kamala Harris. Joining me now, Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour and moderator of Washington Week, and Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham University. And Yamiche, I will start with you. It was like a flood of navel-gazing stories that were sort of innuendo-based and sort of leakish-based all at once, from CNN, from Politico, from Business Insider, just all at once in a flood yesterday. What do you make of that? What is going on? Because the Fox News stuff is what we expect. Of course, they're going to be racist and misogynist. That's just what, it's their brand. What's happening in terms of the White House?
Well, it's a great question, and I think there are multiple ways to answer this. The first is I know you asked me what's going on in the White House, but we have to, in some ways, pause for birtherism 2.0, right?
Hello.
Questioning whether or not, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go.
Yeah, questioning whether or not Vice President Harris is from this country, has an alliance to America, when she is an American woman who was born here. It to me is just, it really blows my mind that we've sort of arrived back here. We already had this fight. We already had this stupidness. Apart from that, when you talk to White House officials and when I talk to sources, there are two things going on, which is there are Democrats who are very worried about her staff, who feel like she's not really being supported in the right way, that her shop sort of is still dealing with sort of the aftermath of her failed run for president, and that there's some real dysfunction there. The second thing is, and I talked to a source just a few minutes ago who said, when you break a glass ceiling, you are going to get cut. Meaning that this is also sort of part of what happens when you rise to the top, especially when you're the first woman vice president. You're going to have a lot of incoming. And also this person said, when you're vice president, you get handed the stuff that is hard to do. Joe Biden also had his own issues with sort of not being able to finish and to make headway on some of the issues that he had as vice president. But I think that if you marry those two things, I think there is some real dysfunction, some real anger at her from her staff, some real dysfunction within the White House. But I think there also is this case where people feel like she's being targeted because she is first.
And the thing is, Christina, there's a sense that on the one hand, it's obvious that when you put a black woman, particularly a black woman with immigrant heritage, that triggers all the things on the right? And it's obvious that they always want to have another Hillary Clinton. That's their wheelhouse, is to just constantly attack some powerful woman that they are afraid might be president one day. So again, that's why I said that is expected. That is their brand. But the thing that I hear from folks who love Kamala Harris and were so excited for her to be president is that they look around and they go, hang on a second. How did she get handed all the things that wound up getting junked? The White House has essentially backed off on voting rights. That's her portfolio. The White House has essentially backed off on police reform. Tim Scott basically threw that over the side. That's gone. That is in her portfolio. She gets handed the talking points don't come, and now immigrant, supporters of immigration are attacking her. She was echoing the White House policy, but she's the one who got to say that. It's like she keeps on drawing the hand of things that don't have public support or that are impossible. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, Joy. I mean, I wrote a piece in the New York Times this summer that said it's a trap. I mean, literally every policy issue that we have not been able to resolve as a nation, Democrats or Republicans, is on the docket of Kamala Harris. Whether it's immigration and the border, whether it's policing, voting rights, you name it, the list goes on and on. I essentially said, she has the portfolio of give it to Mikey, right? And I mean, and it's one of those things where she can't win. I mean, literally, no matter what she does, if she somehow makes some headway on this, there are going to be a significant number of Democrats and almost all Republicans who are going to be displeased with her. So, and part of it is the trap of being a vice president, but we also know she's also a Black woman in the workplace. And so she's always had these issues of personnel talking out of school. We can talk about whether or not these are credible conversations or if it's just this issue of a very powerful Black woman who is given a portfolio and she's trying to do her best, knowing that Joe Biden may or may not run. We know that if Joe Biden decides not to run, Kamala Harris will not be the heir apparent. We know that every single random senator, governor, member of the House, mayor, you name it, male, will try and throw his hat in the ring and leapfrog a vice president.
Yeah.
And we'll have a pretty significant Democratic primary situation. But I think some of, we need to be fair. Some of these policy critiques, may be something that we want to look into, especially if Joe Biden decides not to run in 2024. But we know that the attacks, John McCain was born in Panama, as far as I'm concerned. I believe that's the case.
So, I mean,
the birtherism 2.0, I mean, obviously, she's an immigrant of not one but two parents. She's a woman. She's child-free. She's all the things. She's married to a Jewish American. She's all the things that the Republicans fear. And we see them resulting in these really insidious, insulting attacks that they've had since day one, and unfortunately she has to do her job while also deflecting from that.
And Yamiche, and I wonder, when you talk to sources, do the Democrats understand the potential for huge backlash here? Because if the Black woman gets left holding the bag, they'll be like, well, wow, she should have picked transportation secretary or, been the attorney general, because those are the places where she could have actually shined. Attorney general would have been a good gig, and maybe she'd actually prosecute some folks and go after them, whereas what we have now. But the backlash, if she gets thrown under the bus, will be huge among Black women, and they need Black women to vote for them.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And when I talk to Democratic sources, as well as some White House sources, they understand that who she is as the first Black woman to hold this position, as the child of immigrants, that she is the face of the Democratic base. She is, in some ways, what the Democrats talk about when they talk about the future of their party. She is this meshing of culture. She is someone who is experienced, who is in some ways claiming her power. The problem, though, is that when you actually talk, when I'm talking to pollsters, there is this issue of sort of her sort of popularity among African Americans. Let's remember, there was this Democratic primary, and Joe Biden got more support among Black people than she did. I mean, it is something that you have to talk about when you talk about Vice President Harris. So that doesn't mean there's not going to be a backlash. That doesn't mean that Black women in this country are like, you better treat this Black woman right in office. But there is this real, I think, conundrum that she's going to have to deal with. When I talk to Democrats, it's her issue to fix if she wants to be president of the United States. It is going to be something where she's going to have to really endear herself to Black people and not just say, of course, I'm African American. Of course, I understand and went to Howard. But also, what are you going to do? What do you have to show for me? Because really sending her to the border to say, don't come here, and her not forcefully, at least at the beginning, talking about sort of the Haitian migrant crisis and other things that I think left a bad taste in some people's mouths, that really can hamstring her, even though, of course, she did push back at those images. But I think there are some people who want her out there more, talking more about Black people's issues.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. This is going to be a conversation, because this is a conversation people are having, at least in my circle. So it'll be interesting as it continues. Yamiche Alcindor, Christina Greer, you guys are great. Thank you very much. And up next.